Welcome to part B of the third video in Lysna's Team Behavioural Research series. The focus of the third video is on questioning and listening. Part B looks at listening behaviour. One thing we notice in our work is that people tend to focus on learning questioning behaviour rather than listening. But all our years of research have taught us the first rule about questions, which is there is no point in asking good questions if you don't listen to the answers. And to that we will add a second rule. Unless you know what information you want to hear, you won't know the most effective questions to ask. So for us, listening trumps questioning every time. The best definition of listening that we have heard comes from the former hostage negotiator Richard Mullender. Note that he does not suggest that listening is about hanging on to every word. It's about identifying the key words. And by key words, he means what is said that you can use to your advantage in a conversation. In our listening behaviour group, we have 3 behaviours, although these are not the only behaviours you may use in a meeting that demonstrate that you have been listening. But what characterises these 3 is that they all pick up on and use previous content of the conversation. First is testing understanding, which is a question type that clarifies what has been previously said. Next is summarising, which is a concise repetition of previous content. And then we have matching, which connects a suggestion or a comment with something that somebody else has already said in the conversation. Looking at the frequency of the behaviours in a typical meeting, we can see that testing understanding is by far the most used, with summarising the least. And what else is noticeable is that one person is using far more listening behaviours than the rest. We often find in meetings that one person takes on the responsibility of using testing understanding and summarising in particular to ensure that everybody else is on the same page. This person is often the facilitator or the chairperson of the meeting. Let's look at how these behaviours are used. Starting with testing understanding, its main use is to get clarification in the conversation. So you can use it to confirm whether or not you have heard something correctly or to check your understanding of a particular word or phrase. In addition, you can also use it as an alternative to disagreement. This can be effective if you phrase it in a way that makes you come across as confused or uncertain as to what has been said. But you can also use it in a more direct and confrontational way. The general response to these more challenging forms of testing understanding is that people find them manipulative and patronising. So what we would say about testing understanding is that it is a powerful behaviour which comes with a health warning. Use it with care. Moving on to summarising, this is the least used of our listening behaviours, but this may be because it is not a behaviour that we use in informal conversation. Imagine if you were meeting a friend for a beer in a bar. At the end of the conversation, would you offer to summarise it for them? Probably not, because this is not a social norm. In formal business conversations, however, summarising is important. Every time we have found it in conversations, it has been an important behaviour, even if it is used infrequently. The best times to use summarising are at the start of a meeting, if you want to summarise previous conversations or the situation, at key points in the meeting, after you have reached agreement on something or come to the end of an important topic, and then finally at the end, especially when confirming actions and next steps. Summarising also has a role to play when persuading someone else to change, as summarising the benefits of a change can help reinforce in somebody's mind the need for change and move them further along the don't change, change scale. Matching is our final listening behaviour, and we can use this in a number of ways. This is where Mullender's definition of listening comes into its own. In the first example, the speaker has expressed a positive opportunity for them, but has then gone on to also express some doubts. The listener picks up on the positive keywords and repeats them back to the speaker, so the match helps to put the speaker into a more positive frame of mind. In the second example, the speaker mentions a concept of compelling event that is important to them, and the listener picks up on it and incorporates it into a proposal to make a match. In the third example, the speaker expresses a clear need for forecasts and the listener responds to it, so the match provides the speaker with what they want. Our research has found matching to be an incredibly important behaviour, particularly in terms of building rapport and enabling change, because it helps to establish connection between people. We have one more behaviour to share with you, which is similar to matching, but it is traditionally classed as a proposing behaviour because it develops or extends an existing proposal. This behaviour is called building because it builds on someone else's proposal. We include it here because you cannot build on another proposal unless you have listened to it in the first place. When we observe how teams put forward ideas, we see two patterns emerging. On one side, you have the team where everyone is putting forward their own ideas. On the other side, we have a team where some members are building on the other members' proposals. So this makes for two very different types of meeting. On one side, you could argue that the team is promoting originality and diversity, but it could also be seen as competitive. On the other side, there seems to be more collaboration happening. If we look at ratios of proposals to building across some sample meetings, we find a range of 3:1 to 5:1. This suggests that in most groups, people tend to put forward their own proposals rather than build on others. So there is potentially more competition than collaboration happening. This can also depend on the power dynamics and the relationships between the individual team members. As with all behaviour, building can vary between individuals. This graph shows the number of proposals made by individuals in a meeting plotted against their number of builds. The red and orange people are clearly doing more proposing than building, but the opposite is true for the yellow person. Both the yellow and blue people have proposing to building ratios of below 2:1, which indicates a more collaborative style of meeting. The red and orange people have ratios that well above 2:1, which can indicate a more competitive meeting with different egos battling to get their ideas heard. The green person occupies a more neutral position. So building is a useful behaviour if you want to create a shared set of goals and actions from a team meeting. One final point about building is that it is relatively easy to get it wrong and offer a counter-proposal rather than a build. We introduce you to the concept of counter-proposals in video 2, which is when one person puts a proposal forward and then someone else immediately offers an alternative. Counter-proposals have the opposite effect of builds, in that they tend to result in the original proposer either not feeling heard or not feeling that their idea has been respected. So, when putting forward a build, make sure that you demonstrate how you are building on the original idea. To summarise, we have introduced you to the 3 listening behaviours of testing understanding, which helps you to clarify and confirm your understanding of what someone else has said, summarising, which ensures everyone has a common understanding of the key content of the conversation, and matching, which picks up and uses key words within the conversation to build rapport and agreement. We have also introduced you to the building behaviour, which enables more collaborative proposal making and action planning to take place. This is the end of part B of video 3. Here are some questions for you to think about for your meetings. In our final video 4, we will introduce you to the behaviours that reflect people's attitude towards change. And if you want to take part in this research, then please get in touch with one of us.